You're listening to the weekly Dartscast. 180!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf. I'm Alex Moss, and back by popular demand from holiday, he makes his return. It is, of course, my co-host, Darts statistician, Burton, DeWitt. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine. We're recording on a Thursday evening, and it's the 15-year anniversary of the greatest football match, one of the greatest football matches, at least of all time. Middlesbrough 8, Manchester City 1. How are you, Alex?
Good to hear. Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. Welcome back. And as you just touched on there, we're recording this on a Thursday evening, so this week's episode is out a little later than usual, which does mean no Premier League picks, which we're both gutted about, but we've still got a stacked show for you guys, lots to look back on, lots to look ahead to, and we've got two great guests coming up as well. Barry Van Peer, what a year he's having, and what a weekend he's just had, winning 3 Challenge Tour titles in one weekend. Plus, for the first time, we're going to be joined by another player having an impressive 2023 so far. Kim Holden joins us, a Women's Series finalist and semi-finalist already this year in the Women's Series, returning this weekend. Those two chats coming up a little bit later on, but let's start, as we always do, with a review of the weekend just gone, starting with the Euro Tour. Michael van Gerwen winning the Belgian Darts Open, beating Luke Humphries 8-6 in Sunday night's final, when it was a first Euro Tour title of the year for MVG, and the title has moved him above Peter Wright, back to number 2 in the world. He's back in the world's top 2 for the first time since April 2021. There's only one more spot left for him to climb, and that is to get back to the top of the world rankings. But will MVG be the next PDC world number 1? What do you reckon?
I think there's a very, very good chance of that for a couple of reasons. One, as things currently stand, there's really only 2 people that anytime imminently could knock Michael Smith off that top perch. One of them, the world number 2, Michael van Gerwen, and the other, the number 3, Peter Wright. But on current form, it does not seem that likely that Peter Wright will do that. He's not playing all that well. At least he's not playing consistently. There's been some moments over the last month and a half where I wouldn't say it looks like he's getting back to his best, but showing that he's at least the poor form has bottomed out, and now we're starting to see some recovery. But it would take a lot of improvement to see him getting to that position where you would think he would contend for a major title sometime this summer. But those are the 2 that right now are in that range. Gerwen Price is a world championship adrift, basically, and there's not going to be a world championship until the world championship, which means if he is going to become number 1, I'll get to him in more detail in a second, it won't be before the new year. So that leaves MVG and Peter Wright. That said, Peter Wright could do it. Like, if he finds his form in the next 2 months and he wins the world match play, he's probably going to be the world number 1 again, because it's £200,000 to whoever wins the world match play this year, £100,000 to the runner up. And okay, if he beats Michael Smith in the final, Michael Smith would probably remain number 1. But otherwise, that means it's a straight shootout between 3 people for that world number 1 come Blackpool. But Michael van Gerwen is playing much better than Peter Wright. And Michael van Gerwen's playing at least as good, if not better, than anyone else in the world other than Gerwen Price right now. So it does seem that he will have that first crack, at least, at knocking Michael Smith off the perch of number 1. But he's defending a lot of money in the back end of the year. And if you look at how things currently go for the World Championship, he's nearly £200,000 behind Michael Smith for the provisional world number 1 at Alexandra Palace in December. If Michael van Gerwen is going to do it this year, it will be better for him to do it sooner rather than later. The world match play is that best opportunity. Otherwise, it's going to be at the World Championships where he'll have to do it. Gerwen Price has a lot more work to do. He is, as I said, playing the best of anyone in the world right now, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I really think Gezi has found his best game and is ready to keep it at that level for as long as, well, people let him. And I think, Gezi is so much better than he was 2 years ago when he was world champion, world number one. But there's 700,000 pounds for him to make up to be world number one for the world championships, because he's defending money at the Grand Slam, which means if he's going to become world number one, he's going to have to win the world championships. He's probably going to have to win at least one, probably two other majors, and hope that Michael Smith and Michael van Gerwen don't get enough in the other events to deny him becoming world number one. That said, Gezi's not defending all that much next year. There's a lot that Gezi would have to do, while Michael van Gerwen will have plenty of opportunities before Gezi has had enough opportunities to close that gap. So the answer is, I think it has to be yes. MVG is likely to be the next number one, or the most likely person to be the next number one, just because of how much the player who's playing the best has to do to catch him before that. But that said, this does not mean Michael Smith is going to relinquish world number one anytime soon. Michael Smith could win the world match play. Michael Smith could win a couple other majors this year, and suddenly that gap is too big for MVG to close, even if he wins the world title. But the question is he likely to be the next number one? And the answer has to be yes.
You mentioned about Gerwen Price and the form that he's on, and I think it is fair to say that if he carries on the way he's going, he will get back to that world number one spot. Maybe not the next person, and that is what the question is. Who is going to be the next world number one? Michael Smith currently occupying that top spot. Michael van Gerwen one spot behind, and it's worth mentioning as well, the gap between second and third is less than £3,000. So never mind getting back to world number one. We could see Peter Wright and Michael van Gerwen swap places a few times over the next few months leading into the world match play. But yeah, I think longer term on that world number one spot, we are looking at Michael van Gerwen as the man really that could do it over the next 5 to 6 months. And you mentioned it about the world match play. There's a lot of money on the line there. Michael is the defending champion in that event. He's won it plenty of times before. And there's a lot of other events coming up between now and the World Championship. So I think if you are looking at someone, you're going to be looking at Michael van Gerwen. You talk about the likes of Gerwen Price, Luke Humphries, Danny Noppert. For them to be the next person, they are going to have to win a lot of these titles, and the World Championship as well, probably win that to be in the conversation. But before then, I think that the battle really is between the two Michaels. It is between Smith and van Gerwen, and the gap going into the World Championships, you mentioned it provisionally, it's around the £200,000 mark, which does seem a lot, but it's not insurmountable, because if Michael van Gerwen can go on a tear, win 2 or 3 majors, then it's possible. And the caveat to that is, what does Michael Smith do in those events? If he's going deep as well, if he's winning majors, getting to finals, semi-finals, then that gap, it's not going to be eaten into it as much. So I think for MVG to get that number one spot back before the World Championship, it is out of his hands to some respect. But going into the World Championships, you'd think it is going to be in his hands. Winning the World Championships, that's not only going to see him become a 4-time world champion and get back the biggest title there is, but it would get him back to the top of the world rankings. And I mentioned April 2021, the date that MVG dropped out of the top 2. Well, he dropped off that top spot January 2021 to Gerwen Price. So it's been nearly 2.5 years now since MVG has been at the top, and to think he was number one for 7 straight years, it's been a long time. And we saw Michael rebuild last year, win major titles again, but at the same time last year we saw the crowning of Michael Smith from a prospect to a major winner and then a world champion, and that stopped Michael van Gerwen getting that world championship and a number one spot. Those 2 accolades, they are with Michael Smith at the moment, and I think they are 2 titles that he's got at the moment that he's not going to want to relinquish pretty quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see how these next few months play out, because both players we've seen, they are winning titles this year on the Euro Tour. They're both contesting for some big honours. The Premier League that's going on, it's not a ranking event, of course, but yeah, I think over these next few months it's going to be an interesting battle. And I think it's wise to say, if you are going to back someone to replace Michael Smith at the top, Michael van Gerwen is the man to do it.
Is Michael van Gerwen's first Euro Tour title of the year, winning in Belgium, and if he wins in Belgium next year, it might not be the only time he'll win in Belgium, because the PDC have announced, according to Dan Dawson, that PDC Europe will hold 2 Euro Tours next year in Belgium, doubling the amount that from this year, as well as the first Euro Tour appearance in Switzerland. That, of course, means there will be 2 fewer events in Germany. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it was good news. And I think the only downside to the tweet that Dan put out was that he mentioned that the Euro Tour is expected to remain at 13 events. I know there's been rumours in the last year or so of it being extended now that we are post-pandemic and we are back to that full calendar of events. But it's a problem that Barry Hearn, Matt Porter, when they've been on the show, they've both mentioned it, that there is only 52 weeks in the year. And how do you cram more events into a calendar that is already bulging for the PDC with what they're running at the moment? I just think back, when I think to the Euro Tour and how they're expanding, I think back to the chat that we had during our Darts Legends series a few years ago now with Rod Harrington, and his vision that he had for the Euro Tour was expanding it to 20 events a year, and he wanted every tour card holder to be involved in those events. And so that was going to be an expanded Euro Tour, and some of those events would replace some of the Players' Championship events. Well, we've seen Rod, he's retired now, so I don't know if we're going to see that vision come to light, but you'd like to think one day down the road we are going to see that number of events, 13 at the moment, increase, maybe not to 20, but 15 or 16. But in the meantime, as we're seeing now, it is going to be a juggling act for the PDC. Those 13 weekends on the Euro Tour, they are hot commodities now, aren't they? You've got countries, regions battling it out to host them events, and it's a great position for the PDC to be in, a tough one, trying to put together that best schedule, because we've seen Germany has been a massive market, still is for the PDC, and you can't argue with how much it's played a part in the success of the Euro Tour to get to where they are now. But as we saw at the weekend, that the news coming out, we've got 2 new events. You've got the second one in Belgium next year. A few weeks ago they mentioned the one in Switzerland coming up as well, and that will mean 2 less events in Germany. They're going from 8 to 6, and I think that is a better balance. I think we're going to see these 2 new events. If they deliver or not, that's only time's going to tell on that one. And the PDC, we know they're going to assess how they go. If they don't go very well, maybe they will look elsewhere. And I don't know too much about live darts in Switzerland and how that event's going to go, but we've had one of the guys on from the SDC, the Swiss Darts Corporation, and I think it was last year, and the setup they've got for their tour events is superb. You know, the events are run very professionally, so I've got high hopes for that event, especially if they're going to be involved in some way. And the second event in Belgium, I've got to mention the crowd at the weekend, because I thought the crowd at the Belgian Darts Open, and a few of the players mentioned it as well, they were brilliant. The best of order, it was impeccable. The respect that they showed all the players, and even the games when you had a player from Belgium going up against a player from another country, it was class. And it goes to show that you can have a really good atmosphere, and at the same time you've not got fans whistling and booing players. So yeah, more of that, and I'm definitely on board.
Well, you took the exact opposite approach I was going to take. I was going to question how Belgium could host darts tournaments if they weren't going to go out of their way to only root for the hometown players. But all joking aside, no, I think this is good. And Belgium is not the first country other than Germany to get multiple events. Austria's got it in the past. And I think it's a good thing to show that the sport is growing in many places. Now, obviously, Belgium has for a while had good players. Kim Huybrechts and Dimitri Vandenberg have been their best players for some time now. But before that, Eric Claris. So Belgium, has a history and has hosted the European Championships before. Switzerland, less so. But if you go back when we started the show, I know in the first couple of years, we talked about how many events there were in Germany, and we talked about, ultimately I think we were in agreement that Germany wouldn't continue to host 8, 9 of the Euro Tour events. Eventually, it would have to go down because the PDC, even though there was money to be made in Germany, there's more money to be made by growing the sport in other places. And it's not that the German market has gotten saturated. Germany can continue to host 8, 9, probably could host all 13 events and sell them out. But that's not going to grow the game the way the PDC wants it. The PDC wants there to be revenue coming in from every country in the world and bringing events to places that haven't had events and getting those events to get publicity in those countries and to eventually get those events on television is the key thing. I was just in Poland last week. Poland will be hosting a World Series event in a couple months, but I could not find darts on Polish television. That doesn't mean it wasn't there, but it wasn't in the hotels I was in. It wasn't being shown on in the bars anywhere I went. And the PDC is going to want to change that. Bringing events to these countries is part of that goal long term to get the sport, if not into the mainstream, at least into the on the verge of the mainstream, to at least be in people's perceptions. And getting an event in Switzerland, getting a second event in Belgium is a way to do that. I think this is good, and I don't know how few the events in Germany will eventually get. I think that it will always be Germany with the most. One, Germany's the biggest country in Europe. Okay, Russia has more people, but other than that, Germany is the most populous country in Europe. So having more events in Germany makes sense. Germany's also a very diverse country historically. You have, Eastern Germany, Western Germany. Saarbrücken was its own country at one point. I mean, before the 1850s, Germany was 70 different countries. So there's a lot of people with distinct cultural identities, all of whom the PDC is trying to reach, and having events all over the country will make sense. But there are other places to get to. And as you mentioned, how many more than 13 events you can have with the calendar only having 52 weeks is a question. Maybe you can squeeze one or two more in the long run. Maybe you can get to 15, but I can't really see it getting much more above that, which means if the PDC wants to get to more countries, it is going to mean not more Eurotour events, but fewer events in Germany. I think this is that first real push in that direction. You're seeing now only the 6 events in Germany. I think a couple years from now that will go down again. I don't see any time in the near future going down below 4, maybe even 5 is the bare minimum, because there is such a huge market there. But there's untapped markets elsewhere. There's still never been a Euro Tour in Spain. There used to be Players' Championships over a decade ago, but there's still never been a Euro Tour in Spain. Now there's not one in Gibraltar either. There's still not been in Southeast Europe. When will there be a Euro Tour, maybe in Greece or Croatia? That's something to look to. There's never been one in Italy. And there's never been one in Poland. So there's a lot of places for the PDC still to go to that they haven't yet. And it's going to come mostly at the expense of Germany, with some of these just being, a couple years on and a couple years off in the other countries.
Definitely exciting times ahead. Well, we're going to continue our look back at the weekend and focus on the Challenge Tour in a moment. But let's get to the man of the moment. He won 3 of the titles on the Challenge Tour weekend. He is top of that order of merit now. Here's our chat with Barry Van Peer.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the player who is now top of the Challenge Tour order of merit after winning 3 titles this past weekend, Barry Van Peer. Thanks for the time again, Barry. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. It's been a good weekend, so good times now.
Well, thanks for coming back on. And there is only one place to start, and that is with the weekend just gone in Milton Keynes. 5 events played on the Challenge Tour, and you won 3 of them to go top of the pile and open up a big lead at the top. You've had a few days back home now. Have those achievements from the weekend fully sunk in now?
Yeah, they've been sunk in a little now. It's been an amazing weekend, of course. Getting the number 1 spot was my main goal. No matter how much it would be the lead, like if it was 50 pounds or I don't know more, I would have been happy. I would have taken it anyway. But winning 3 out of 5 is just changes the whole weekend, right? So it's an amazing achievement for myself as well. So happy with these.
And we know there's still plenty of events left to go. There's 2 more weekends of the Challenge Tour season, but you are in a position that I guess any player that hasn't got a tour card at the moment can only dream of being top of that Challenge Tour. So how do you manage those expectations going forward and not get ahead of yourself?
I'm just going to keep on doing the same thing I've been doing for the past months, really. Just not worry too much about everything, no pressure, just play and take every game as it comes, and then we'll just see where it ends.
Well, we'll come back to this past weekend later, but let's rewind back a few months to March and the second weekend of the Challenge Tour season, where you picked up your first title of the season. It was your first PDC title in 3 years too. What did that win mean to you to get back winning on the PDC, because you'd been in some good form, having just won the Dutch Open over in the WDF a month earlier?
Yeah, it was a long time ago since I won the tournament at the PDC, so of course it's super nice. Meant a lot to me actually, because I wanted to do really well this year in the Challenge Tour, and I know my form was good, so it was like I just have to fire everything at all cylinders at the start of the weekend and just make sure I get a good spot on the ranking so I can play Pro Tours. Of course, if people withdraw. But yeah, that was my goal that weekend, and it worked out for me. And from there, yeah, it was just cruise control, and yeah, now we're here.
Yeah, you mentioned those Pro Tours. That title helped you get back in the Players' Championship events as one of those top-up players, and it's fair to say that you're probably going to be in all those Players' Championship events now for the rest of the year. But what was it like being back playing in those events? Could you play with a bit more freedom without the pressure of needing wins for the rankings?
Yeah, I would say it's better to play without the pressure for that one, but at the same time, it just felt amazing. A lot of big players actually were like, "Hey, you're back. Good to see you, and I've been watching you." And yeah, I'm like, why are you following my results? Why would you? But they're actually all excited for me, and it's really nice to hear. And yeah, it kind of felt like home. Yeah, the goal at the end of the year is, of course, to just make sure I'm there the next 2 years minimum. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, we also saw you on the Euro Tour as well, and we've got to mention that Battle of the Walk-Ons that you had with Jules Van Dongen. We had Jules on the show just before that weekend, and he warned us about his new walk-on song. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I know Jules quite a while now, and I literally said to him the day before, you know what will be funny, or what will probably be typical, that we play each other in the first round. And we were like, nah, it won't probably happen, right? And then we saw the draw, and I was just laughing my head off, and I just texted him. The first thing was this is probably going to be one of the funniest or best walk-ons for a Dutch person, at least, to have. And yeah, we both enjoyed it a lot. It was quite a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't know, maybe once in a few years there will be a chance to this to happen due to draws and so. So yeah, it was super cool.
Times, and you've picked up some good wins on the Euro Tour as well. You've beat the likes of Josh Rock, Alan Suter, Johnny Clayton, and you've made the final day a couple of times. How much confidence have you taken from those weekends playing on the stage again?
Yeah, first time I qualified this year was for Munich, and then I played Jules, of course. Winning against him was a little bit of a weird game. He couldn't get going, but I was just playing good, and that made me feel very good actually. And it was so good to be back on stage and actually show the level I've been playing for the past months. And then I think I beat Josh Rock the next day, which he was not on his normal level, but I mean still I was pretty okay. And then losing the next day is not what you want, of course, but yeah, I was still happy with my performance. And the next day, the next European Tour, I beat Alan Suter and Johnny Clayton, and in front of my home crowd as well. So I can't really complain at all about that. It was an amazing feeling.
Well, let's get back to the weekend just gone, and a memorable one for you, winning those 3 titles. I think it was something like 32 matches played, and you won 30 and lost 2 over the weekend. Are there any wins in particular, or any of the 3 titles which stand out the most for you, or are you pleased with all of them? Do they rank the same?
Well, the first one is you're fresh, it's the first tournament weekend, so everyone is either getting warmed up in it, or they're gonna play their best because of the level of focus. So it actually felt really good winning the first one, and yeah, it just lost the third round or something in the next one, which is little bad luck, I would say. But I was tired, and the next day I was just I was feeling good again. And when I won that first tournament again, I was like, what the hell am I doing? It was kind of unreal. I was like, okay, this is number 2. I'm like, okay, I'll just try to get as far as possible in the next one. And then I got actually so tired at some point. I was like just drinking Red Bull and eating power bars and everything to just keep the power okay. And I think I survived some matches in the quarterfinals, and I was like, if he just hits it, it's fine, I can go to sleep. And if he misses, I'm just gonna go all out and just try to win this tournament anyway. It would have been positive both ways, kind of. But yeah, it was amazing. I think the third tournament was probably the one I'm most happy with. That's like the 2 on one day. Yeah, because it's just super tough. It was energy draining to the max. But yeah, every tournament win is of course super good. So yeah, I can't really take a favorite or something.
Yeah, I was going to say those 2 titles on the Saturday certainly stuck out for me. Your first game of the day around 10:45 in the morning, and fast forward 10 hours later to around 8:45 in the evening, and you're closing out the second title of the day. You mentioned there the Red Bull, that might be a sponsorship coming your way. It looks like you've mastered the whole long days playing darts thing now.
Yeah, the first day, winning, and then the last 64, and I was already tired as hell. I was like, no, like, oh my god, if I get further in this one, maybe tomorrow I'm gonna be so tired. I was actually quite happy to be in bed. But the next day I went 2 tournaments, and I literally, I went out for some food quickly after with my brother, and I just touched my bed and I was just knocked out straight away. I was like, oh no. I hope I wake up in the morning with some energy. But it was still tough in the morning. But still reached the last 8 or last 16. Don't really remember. Which I even thought I was. I lost to William Borland. I had the feeling I could win. I started really well. But I just couldn't. The wire was a little against me. And then I was like, okay, I'm too tired for this. Just let's go home. But it happens. Learning experience.
Well, I mean, you can't have too many complaints from the weekend, and you've made history as well. 5 career Challenge Tour titles, that's the most of any player. The money that you've won this year, that's the most that any player's won in a single Challenge Tour season, and there's still 2 weekends to go. So how proud are you to have set these records?
Yeah, I'm very proud, of course. Making records is, of course, super good. It's super cool because, people want to be breaking records, that's motivation for some people. And the season isn't even over yet, so we'll just have to see what it will end with. Maybe there's another win, maybe there's no more wins. We'll just have to see.
Well, away from the Challenge Tour, we get asked by our listeners who is the best player without a tour card right now, and I'm not saying this just because we're talking to you, but I did pick you for my answer. But let's throw it to you, and you can't pick yourself, so taking Barry Van Peer out of the equation, who do you think's the best player right now, not on the PDC Tour?
Not on the PDC Tour. If I'm allowed to pick 2, I'll pick 2. Because one is doing really well in the WDF, and the other one is also doing really well in the WDF, but the other one is young, and the other one is in the men's only, which are Luke Littler and Andy Badens, which really stand out for me. I wouldn't be able to pick which is better at the moment, because Andy has been winning WDF tournaments lately for fun, pretty much, and Luke has also just won the Modus Champions Week, and he's still under 18, which is, it's just insane.
Yeah, I think there's some popular choices there. And back to yourself, when we last spoke, it was just after you won the Dutch Open. It put you in a provisional spot for the WDF World Championship via that reserve list, and you said you were looking at possibly entering a few more of the events. Is that still the plan, or given what you've gone on to do on the Challenge Tour, are you focusing on that now to get that first World Championship appearance via the PDC now?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to play in both, because I know the WDF one starts at the beginning of December and the PDC is in the middle of December that starts. So if I can play both, and I think I'm okay with that, but I'm still planning to go for a few tournaments and then just get a few more points, because I'm not sure how much points I will need. But yeah, I'm planning a few tournaments. I actually had to miss out on one because of a European tour I qualified for, so that's a little unlucky, but at the same time happy for me. So we'll have to see.
And away from your own darts, you mentioned to us you're also giving darts clinics a few evenings now as well. Just tell us a little bit about that, and for any of our listeners that are in the Netherlands, how can they find out more about that?
I have a new sponsor, Darts Shop Darts Fun, since just before the Dutch Open, and they've been very supportive of every tournament. And during the week, like in the evenings after work, I'll just go home, eat, and all that, and then I'll just drive to the shop, and people can book me for a darts clinic, like improve their game or their stance, scoring doubles, anything really that they want to improve, and I'll spend my time with them and try to get the best out of them. And if they want to find out how it works, you can just visit the Darts Shop Darts Fun website or Facebook and just message them, and you'll find your way.
Good man. And just lastly, you said to us after missing out on a tour card at Q School this year, you had to get into a new mindset for the rest of 2023. It's fair to say that's going well. Winning the Dutch Open, 4 Challenge Tour titles, you're in a good position to get to the Grand Slam, get your tour card back, get to Ali Pali. Have you had time to reflect on how these last few months have gone for you, and how do you now approach this rest of the year now?
The mindset that definitely changed. I had a very not dark, I would say, but at Q School I was like so frustrated, and I got like blackout kind of. And from that moment I just thought like, okay, screw it, I'm just gonna play and just enjoy the game. And from that moment I won the Dutch Open and the Challenge Tours, of course, and it's been an unbelievable feeling, and I'm just like kind of cruising on not on the success or anything. I'm just cruising on enjoying what's going on and possibly what's more to come. I'm just gonna enjoy the game the rest of the season and we'll just do the same as I'm doing. I'm not gonna change anything, and hopefully it works out.
Well, it's working out so far, Barry. Congratulations on the titles at the weekend, and appreciate the time as always, and we wish you all the best for what else is to come in 2023 as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. No problem, and maybe I'll be back in the future.
Thanks again to Barry for joining us. Now let's have a look back at the Challenge Tour at the weekend, and it certainly was the Barry Van Peer show, winning 3 of the 5 titles. A word for the 2 other winners at the weekend: Wayne Jones back in the winners' enclosure in the PDC, and also Conan Whitehead picking up the final title of the weekend. But looking at where things are now, we're 3 weekends into the Challenge Tour season, and fair to say Barry Van Peer looks like he's pretty much sealed the top spot. But let's focus on the race for number 2, and there's also a World Championship and a tour card available for that second spot. So who do you fancy right now to finish probably behind Barry Van Peer now?
Well, maybe he can start over again for the last few weekends and catch everyone else and finish first and second. I mean, it was, just to start, it was such an impressive weekend by Barry Van Peer, winning 3 of the first 4 events, winning 2 on a day. It's not something that happens that often, and it's certainly not that often that you win 2 on a day and still manage to win another title that weekend. Almost Bo Greaves-like stuff. As for who's going to finish second, it's a really, really tight race right now. It's currently a tie between a Chris and a Christian, Landman and Kist. But then only 100 pounds behind them is Dragut and Horvat. John Henderson's less than 200 pounds back. Ron Muhlenkamp is very close. Cam Crabtree is less than a title out of it right now. Conan Whitehead is the next one. So a final out, and Conan Whitehead's a final out of it as well. So there's a lot of players really close. There's still a few others who aren't that further adrift of them. So it is wide open. But I'm going to focus on 2 of those that I just think have the better chance. One, John Henderson. It wasn't the best weekend for Henderson. There's no other way to put it, but it's not as bad as it seems. Yes, of the 5 events, he lost first match in 3 of them. That's why it was not a good weekend for him. But if you look at the people he lost to, Eddie Lovely, currently 20th on the Challenge Tour Order of Merit. He also lost his first round to Ron Muhlenkamp, currently 6th. Another first-round exit to Ryan Hogarth. He's not had a great year, but it was only a few years ago that he was a seed at the last ever BDO World Championships. So, those are pretty good players. He lost his best run was last 16. He lost to Dom Taylor, who's 21st on the Challenge Tour Order of Merit. He's lost to some really good players. And the only one who I haven't mentioned, Jim McEwen. Okay, Jim McEwen's a little further down, but he averaged 108.5 in that match. So it was a bad weekend for Hendo, but it's also a weekend where you can say he had a tough draw. Yes, he needs to play better than that if he's going to get back into second, but overall this year, he is playing pretty well. He's won a title. He's made 3 other quarterfinals, 2 more last 16s on top of that. He's overall been playing at a high level, and he's qualified for a bunch of Euro Tours as well, which shows that where he goes and when he goes somewhere, he's in it to come out on top that day, and he's doing a pretty decent job of putting himself in position to do that. And overall, he's 3rd in the averages this year, and the 2 people ahead of him are well down on the Challenge to Order of Merit. So of the contenders, he's overall statistically played the best. But the other person I'm going to mention is the person who is right ahead of him by 75 pounds, Jaguden Horvat. Horvat is 6th in the averages so far, but he's currently managed to be 4th in the Challenge Tour, only 100 pounds out of second, despite only playing 8 of the events. He skipped the first weekend. So he's done all this in 2 weekends. This past weekend, he didn't do as well as he did the first weekend, but he still made a semifinal. He still made a last 16. And he also made a final. He didn't win a title, but he made a final, losing to Barry Vampire. So it's, again, another really good weekend. We've only seen 2 weekends from him, but it's almost as much as everyone else has managed, other than Barry Vampire, to do in 3 weekends. Jaguden Horvat, he was very close to winning a tour card last year. He's been very close to doing so many times. He's always a player that falls just short. But this year, it seems like he's taking that next step. Now, the question is, what will he do come the back end of the year? And, I should also mention in the German Super League, he's missed multiple match starts to get to the World Championships in the past. So he's gotten himself in position and hasn't crossed the line, but he seems a better, more complete player this year. And he seems just that little bit more mentally strong. Is this the year that he crosses the line? I don't know, because he's put himself in that position to get a tour card, to get to the World Championship before and fallen short. But he's never been this good. He's never been this consistent. And maybe that's going to be the difference. Maybe this is that year. Obviously, any of those players can do it. Anyone, if they have a weekend like Barry Vampire just had, would be able to make up that gap and then some. Barry Vampire's those 3 titles is more than anyone else has won this year. But I think it comes down to most likely the players in that group within 1,000 pounds of second place. And of those, Henderson and Horvat are the 2 that I'm looking as the most likely to get over the line.
Yeah, I really like that shout for Dragutin Horvat. Considering, as you say, he's missed one of the weekends, he's really made his mark in the events that he has been able to play in so far. And you've just heard from Barry Vampire, so I won't talk too much about him because this will turn into the Barry Vampire show, but an outstanding weekend from him, and it's not just the best part of £7,000 to clear a second, but 3rd as well. And it was famous last words I said on the show recently about the Challenge Tour, that no one's running away with it this year. No one's doing a Scott Williams. Well, Barry's gone and won 3 titles in a weekend and pretty much sewn everything up. But as we're discussing now, it is all eyes on that race for second spot, because there's 2 tour cards, 2 Ali Pali spots available. So it's not all is not lost for everyone else, because, as you said there, it's very tight amongst quite a lot of players. I think there's around 8, 9, 10 players well in the mix, well within £1,000 or so. And as you touched on there, the 2 players, 2nd and 3rd, is Chris Lamb that's ahead of Christian Kist on countback. So very close at the moment for those players. And a lot of those players up there, they've done it already. They've won titles this year, the likes of Chris Lamb and Christian Kist, who I mentioned there. But you look at some of the other names that have been able to get their their name on it on a title. And Conan Whitehead's the most recent of them. And you think back to just before this weekend, I think he was on around £800 from the event so far this year. He's gone and picked up £3,000 and he's put himself right in contention. So that shows you what a couple of good runs, a couple of good days on the Challenge Tour can do. And we've still got 2 more of these weekends. And I think there's a case for a lot of players. They'll be looking at it now and going, well, I'm not going to get into the Grand Slam, but if I can put a run together now over the 1 or 2 weekends, you've got a real shot of getting that second spot. So I think it's going to be an exciting last couple of weekends now to see who's going to be the one to finish in second place. And you mentioned another player there, John Henderson. I think if we were to ask our listeners, that would probably be the most popular answer. I think a lot of darts fans, they want to see Hendo back on the tour next year. But for me, it's hard to really back someone and be confident about it, given the quality on show here, that a lot of the players are pretty close together. But I'd love to see Christian Kist have another go, and I can't compliment him enough, really, the strength that he's got, because I've never met Christian before or spoke to him, but we know about the injuries that he's had in the past, and that's really hindered his career, because he is a former Lakeside champion and he did pretty well on the tour for a little while until the injuries really held him back. And to think he's still fighting to get back on the tour, and what a way to do it, to do it via the Challenge Tour, that route. Some of these weekends, there's a lot of darts to play. They can be grueling weekends. For him to get that second spot would be an incredible achievement. So yeah, going with heart over head for this one. I'm going to go with Christian Kist, and his nickname is the Lipstick. So I'm just hoping that me tipping him hasn't given him the kiss of death to finish second now.
Yeah, I think we probably gave a few people the kiss of death, the Christian kiss of death.
Really? I like it.
Now, Challenge Tour was last weekend. This weekend's the Women's Series resuming, and only 2 more weekends before the cutoff for Blackpool for the second Women's World Match Play. Who from outside the current top 8 do you tip to break in? Although I'm pretty sure I can guess at least one of those players that you're going to name.
Yeah, from one race to another, and this one you don't usually associate Blackpool with the heat. I've been there 3 times now for the opening weekend of the World Match Play, and I think I've seen more rain than sun, although one time I did see the sun. One of my friends managed to get sunburnt, which in Blackpool that does take some doing. But the race to Blackpool is hotting up, and you've got at the top of that list at the moment Bo Greaves, Mikuru Suzuki 1 and 2. I think they've got their B&Bs booked for Blackpool. They're looking forward to that trip to Pirates Bay on the seafront, and for both of them it's going to be debuts in this event. I know it's only the second year that we've had the Women's World Match Play, but neither of them were in the field last year. Bo, of course, she only started playing the Women's Series after the cut-off for this event last year. So 2 star names in the women's game, we're going to see them involved, which is it's going to be good to see them there. Elsewhere, you look at the big 4, Lisa Ashton at 3, Fallon currently in 7th spot there in the provisional field, and Fallon only £200 clear of that 9th spot. So there's going to be some work for her to do before the cut-off next month to be assured of her place in the field. And, of course, the defending champion. So, yeah, it would be a shame for her to miss out, but I think she'll do enough to get in. And you're going to hear from the player currently in 8th spot, Kim Holden. Really enjoyed the chat that I had with her earlier this week. And fair to say, you look down at that list of players currently in the field, she is the unknown quantity on that list. Not many people have heard of her before. She's as I was chatting to her earlier, you can hear about her a bit more in a moment, but she's only been playing darts for the last 3 or 4 years. So to get to where she is now, it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of practice. So fair play to her. And I've got to say, having chatted to her, I'm hoping that she's going to get over the line to do it. But aside from Kim, looking at players that could maybe get in, and just behind her, you've got Robin Byrne and Katie Sheldon, 2 young Irish players that they've both made Women's Series finals in the past. Katie, she was in the match play last year, and I think they're 2 names to definitely watch out for, because, as I say, they've got previous of getting to finals, and we know that the prize money that's on offer is pretty top heavy, really, getting to finals and winning titles. And if you can get to finals, that is going to make a difference. And yeah, the player you're probably guessing is going to be Kirsty Hutchinson, of course, who kindly wears our weekly Dartscast sticker. So yeah, I'd love to see her make it, not just for her, but of course for us, so we can get on TV again. But aside from that, I'm going to go with Anastasia Dobromyslova. That's going to be my tip here. I'll go head over heart for this one, and I think I've got to say as well, it's a shame that this event is only 8 players, because I think there's an argument, maybe not this year, but in future years, you could increase it to 16 players. You could have a Saturday afternoon session where you have the last 16 games, and then a Sunday afternoon, as it is now, quarterfinals played to a finish. I think we're seeing the strength in the ladies' game by the women's series really start to pick up. So that could be something for future years. But before then, to get in that top 8, I'm going to go with Anastasia. It's been good to see her back playing. I know she's had a break from the game. But yeah, seeing her back involved again is good. And we've not seen her hit her best form yet. I think there's still plenty more to come, and probably expected given the break that she's had. But I think she's well equipped to go on deep runs in the women's series. And if she can get one good run, that could just be the spark. It could snowball, and we could see her go on and put multiple deep runs on the board. So for me, I think if we can see Anastasia go on a deep run, I think there's going to be plenty more coming after that, and she could be one to nick one of those spots.
Yeah, you guessed right. Obviously, our heart is hoping it's Kirsty Hutchinson, since she, as you mentioned, wears our sticker. But it is a lot for her to do. She is 900 pounds behind Kim Holden right now. And there's time. There's 8 events, but she's going to have to really up her game from where it currently is if she's going to close that gap. You know, if you look in averages so far this year, she's 28th. Granted, the person right ahead of her is Kim Holden. So it is doable, and the time is running out. Of the players a little closer, I really fancy Noah Lynn and Van Leuven to close the gap. She's 6th in averages so far across the first 4 events. There is a big gap between 5th and 6th. So, you know, there is a top 5, really. But she's the best of the players who are not in that top 5. And, you know, look at the past weekend at the Welsh Open and Welsh Classic. She made the final of the Classic, losing to Bo Greaves. She only made the last 16 of the Open, but that's because she had to go against Bo Greaves, who averaged 107 in knocking her out in the last 16. So, I mean, Noah Lynn, we haven't seen much of her, but she's really emerging as one of the top players, both in the WDF and in the PDC Women's Series so far this year. And if she keeps that up, I think she will catch at least one of those people in front of her. It's only 350 pounds. Dita Hedman, Anastasia Dobromyslova, Anka Zylstra, Trina Gulliver, you know, those are some big names who right now are right outside, and they're going to need to win a title to make up that gap. But they can. Dita and Anastasia have before. Trina did last year. Trina probably would have made the world match play last year had she not skipped the last weekend. She was in the 8th spot entering the final weekend, and I think only 2 people passed her that weekend. If she can find a day like she did when she won the title last year, she'll make up that difference. There's a lot of players, though, who are right there. And you look at the people who are currently in just barely. Some of them are pretty darn good. Aline de Graaf was the runner-up last year. Fallon Sherrick, as you mentioned, was the winner last year. They're currently 6th and 7th, and they're not that far ahead of Robin Byrne in 9th. It's really, really tight. The top 4 probably have done enough to get there. I mean, yes, there's still 2 more weekends they could drop off, but there are also 4 of those 5 who are near the top of the averages. They are 4 of the best women's players in the world. Obviously, Bo Greaves and Makoto Suzuki, who have been the top 2 so far this year, but Lisa Ashton and Rihanna Sullivan as well. Fallon Sherrick seems to have rebounded from where she was at the back end of last year, and is playing not as well as she was a couple years ago, but close to it. And I think she'll do enough to stay there. Aline de Graaf and Lorraine Winstanley, you'd expect to find enough across 2 weekends to do it as well, although Winstanley's been a bit inconsistent recently. There are questions about where her game is as well. But overall, maybe it is just that one spot. And the player who I think is most likely to close the gap, as I said, is Noah Lynn Van Leuven. So that's who I'll go with.
We shall see. Well, from talking about players looking to get into those spots for Blackpool, let's hear from a player that is currently in the provisional field for the Women's World Match Play. Here's our chat with the former Women's Series finalist, Kim Holden.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the former Women's Series finalist, Kim Holden. Thanks for the time, Kim. How are you doing?
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. Yourself?
Doing good, thank you. It's great to have you on. We're talking only a few days before you're going to be in Milton Keynes for the second weekend of the Women's Series for this year. How are you feeling now ahead of getting back playing on the Women's Series circuit again?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Putting some time in on the board, trying to get my preparation right. Unfortunately, I have had to take a bit of time out due to injury from the previous Women's Series. I think throwing that many darts, I don't think my arm's ever done that before. People don't realise, unless they've done it, the strain that it can put you under. So I've had to go to a clinic and have some electric shock therapy and acupuncture. So I'll have to take my arm up this weekend, and I hope that it stays at bay and allows me to, just concentrate on throwing my darts.
Let's hope so. Well, we'll come on to your recent success on the Women's Series a little later on. You made a semi-final on the first weekend back in February, and I went back and read your post on Facebook after that weekend. You mentioned about how you first got into darts in the first place, and it's a lovely story involving your dad. Do you mind sharing it with our listeners?
No, absolutely, yeah, no, I don't mind. Went to a little local called the Sportsman's on the Wirral. I was basically waiting to go and have hip surgery from my time in the military, and I needed to get out of the house, so we were supposed to be going to play some pool, and then my dad said, well, we'll play some darts, and I said, I'm not throwing them things, and he said, oh, come on, if I beat you at pool, we'll play. He ended up beating me at pool, so we ended up having a game of darts, and I think I took out 111 check out with his own darts, and he said, oh, you can play. I had no idea I could play, to be quite honest with you. I've always played football and basketball, so yeah, it came from that really, and then he encouraged me, taught me the board, got me into a charity league on the Wirral. Then I started playing on a Monday for my dad. He was the captain. He told me when I was ready because it was a men's league, and then it kind of escalated from there really.
And as you say, darts wasn't your first sport. You did basketball. I saw you were quite into your football as well, and away from sport you were in the army for 16 years. So the football, was that during your time in the army?
No, it wasn't. I started playing football when I was 8 years of age, for Tranmere Rovers Football Club on the Wirral, where I stayed with Tranmere for a long time. I moved up into the women's team when I was 14, and I got selected to play for England. So I went on to play football for England under 19 squad, where I went and played in a World Cup, 2 European Championships with a total of, I think it was 33 appearances. So travelled the world playing sport from a young age.
Brilliant. Great career. Well, let's get on to your next sport then that you've got into with the darts, and you claimed your first win beating your dad, and you mentioned there you started to play in some leagues after that. Did you get the bug straight away after that point?
Well, it was I wouldn't say I got the bug straight away, because I couldn't keep 3 straight darts. So it was 26, it was 7, and I said to my dad, oh, this is doing my head in, because I used to be, quite a good footballer, not to blow my own trumpet, at a level, and it was something that I couldn't first grasp, and I certainly wasn't born with the talents that I feel like I was born with football, like a natural ability. I've had to work extremely hard. I say this to my friends at county. I was probably throwing 40 averages when I first started playing, and they say, oh, you're so talented, and I say no, especially to the young girls coming in. I say, oh, I'm not talented. I've really, really worked hard. I've put the time in. I've been disciplined, and yeah, just literally just worked really, really hard to creep up into them 70 averages.
Yeah, we can definitely see that. The hard work is paying off. You are progressing your game. And at what point then on this journey do you decide to give the PDC Women's Series a go? Was there one particular event or moment that gave you that push to want to test yourself in that setting as well?
I think soon as it popped up, that the PDC was putting the women's series on. I was like, 100% want to be doing that. I'd watched all of the big names on the TV because I am a massive watcher of darts, the men's and the women's, and I used to watch the Lakeside, and I'd be like, right, okay, I want to do that. I watched Eileen de Graaf, Casey Hutchinson, a lot more of the girls, but in particular, the games that I seen were very, very high standard at the Lakeside, and I was like, oh, I want to do that, and I could beat them. that was like, I could get there, that was the standard, and I was like, right, as soon as you get there, push her over the line. But there's obviously, a massive amount of ladies out there now. The game's getting so big. There's a lot of really high caliber dart players, and I just really wanted to push myself in that direction. So it was kind of like a goal straight away. Oh, I want to beat you, I want to beat you, and I want to beat you. And that's what I've used as a focus. And then when I seen the PDC Women's Series come up and I seen these girls' names down for going, or I'd heard that they were going, I was like, yeah, I really want to do that. I want to mix it with the best in the world.
And looking back at last year, your first year on the Women's Series, it's fair to say you could see your results. They were improving as the year went on. You were making last 32s, and then that last weekend you had a couple of last 16s. Did you feel like your game was really benefiting from playing those weekends?
Yes, massively it was. But I think for me, putting this time in with my practice partner throughout the week, we do 4 best of 7, and we can play 4 or 5 games in one session. And I was just clocking the averages, and I was saying to myself, right, okay, if you do that next weekend, somebody's going to be in trouble, because I was throwing some good darts, and I think particularly, I missed tops to beat Lorraine Winstanley at the end of last year, and that really, it bugged me that I'd missed it, but I knew I was capable of them beating such a high caliber player like Lorraine.
Well, let's get on to this year and the first weekend of the Women's Series in February, and it was a memorable one for you. The second event on the Saturday, you mentioned about beating the top names. You beat Eileen de Graaf in the early rounds, and you're soon in the quarterfinals for the first time, then the semi-finals for the first time. What was that event like as you're making those big strides?
I can't really remember, I'm going to be honest. I knew I was putting some good darts in. I threw a 29 average on the Friday prior to driving down, travelling down. I was beating my practice partner all week. In the back of my mind, I was saying to myself, you take this with you. I wrote down next to my computer some goals. My goals were to reach a final, reach a semi-final, and to reach a last 16. And I'd forgot that I'd even wrote them down because I was feeling that confidence. And I think if you're feeling that confident because your darts are going, I think it really helps. Certainly when the names come up, Eileen de Graaf, who had beat me before, I really like to play Eileen de Graaf. She's an incredible dart player, and the pace suits me as well. And when I beat Eileen, I thought, right, okay, who's next? On to the next. And that's not being big-headed. That was just because I felt good. I felt really good. I felt like I couldn't miss. And then I can't even remember who else I played. You'll be able to tell me now.
Well, one game that I'm sure you won't forget is that first semi-final. You're up against one of the all-time greats in the ladies' game, Lisa Ashton, and you had a 1-3-6 finish in the first leg. Did that settle any nerves you might have had taking out a shot like that so early on?
Yeah, Lisa's a legend, isn't she? I've been watching Lisa for years on the TV, and I always support Lisa, especially when she's playing against the men and wanting us to really do well. Yeah, I think it did, but I wasn't as nervous as what I was the year before. The year before I crumbled on the stream, and I really worked on that. And I just tried to remember that I'm the underdog and Lisa's the, you know, 4. I think she won 4 world championships. Yeah, she's I'm the underdog. So I tried to remember that, and when I hit the 136, I thought, okay, they're going. You're settled. Let's keep going. And then I remember taking the 95 out on the next one, and the game was going quite quick. And then Lisa, being the legend she is, you know, came up, and I thought, oh, there we go. Kim, you need to really zone in again now and zone into your own game, and they'll go. And luckily, they did. I had first throw as well, the darts for mine on the last leg, so I think that helped massively for me.
Yeah, it's a great win, goes all the way. You win it in a decider 5-4 to make the final, where Bo Greaves, as she very often does, comes out on top. But after that, on the Sunday, you go out early in the first event, but you make up for it in the last event of the weekend to get into the semi-finals. And again, you're beating some top names. Anastasia Dobromoslova, you get that win over Lorraine Winstanley as well. So how did you reflect on the weekend as you left for home on that Sunday evening?
I didn't reflect. I didn't reflect at all. I literally, the support from the Wirral was so overwhelming. I think I had over 500 messages that I literally didn't even respond to, I don't think, until the Tuesday, Wednesday. It was all kind of surreal until I got home, had a look through my averages, had a look how I'd played, seen everyone who I'd beaten over the weekend, and I thought, wow, these were all the people that you were watching at the lakeside, you watched on TV, and these are the people that that have inspired you to get better, and these are the girls that I've took out, and lucky enough I've managed to get over the line with them. But just a note on Bo is just she's on another level, isn't she? She's very special.
Yeah, she is the lady to beat at the moment. But on yourself, you mentioned the averages and going off the Dart Connect, where you can see a lot of the data from the weekends. Last year, you were averaging 60.88 for the year. That was 64th overall. I know we're only one weekend into this year, but your average has gone up almost 8 points, 68.74, 27th on that list. What do you put that down to? Has it been all the hours that you've been putting in on the board?
Yeah, I think it definitely has been the time on the board, but it's also getting that structure of saying what works and what doesn't work, is managing it, because I was doing too much last year. I was doing far too many hours on the board. It was becoming quite mundane. So I've reduced that now. I've got my own dart room at home. I do an hour and a half a night. I mix that up a bit. But also, I think working on my throw, I've changed my throw a lot. My dad says to me, how can you change your throw? You know, been playing for 3.5 years, I think I've been playing for now. How can you change your throw? I can't change my throw. So it's just working on things, and my elbow position, my release, and I think the focus on getting into my zone. If I get into my zone, they go, and if I don't, then they don't go. So I think for me, getting everything right, preparation is key, and certainly finding my own zone. No matter who I'm playing, whether it be Bo Greaves, you know, Fallon Sherrick, Lisa, it's finding that zone where you're comfortable in and going into yourself when you're playing. And if I find that, I do feel quite confident.
Well, it certainly looks like that. And as you said on Facebook after that weekend, darts just got serious. Those results put you in a provisional spot for the Women's World Match Play. You're 4th on the Women's Series Order of Merit for this year. So how do you try and put all that to one side and play this weekend? Or does having a goal like that focus you to push yourself as much as you can?
Well, I think it's been very frustrating for me, because after the first PDC Women's Series, I picked up an injury. I had to go to a clinic for acupuncture and electric shock therapy on my arm. I was told that I had forearm and thumb tendonitis. It was very painful, so I decided to take 4 weeks out. I was struggling to grip my darts. So it's been kind of frustrating. I haven't had the preparation of what I'd want normally. Been strapping my arm up, trying to get used to throwing with my arm strapped up. I've got to kind of put that to the back of my mind and just try, get in my zone, forget what's been going on with my arm, forget that I haven't been happy with the prep what I would have had last time, and just take one game at a time, take one dart at a time, try and find my zone, try and find my release, how I like to play darts, zone out, and then if they go, they go, and if they don't, they don't. The biggest thing for me is to just try and not get frustrated with how I played previous, because, as I say, I haven't had the same preparation going into this one as what I had in the previous one.
No, that's fair enough. Well, two more before we let you go. And you mentioned about, aside from yourself playing darts, you love watching the darts as well on TV. We saw you did pretty well on the predictions on the Premier League a few weeks ago. On our show, Burton, my co-host, and I, we attempt to predict the quarterfinals, and we usually do pretty badly. So we'll give you a chance. Have you had a look at the games for tomorrow? Have you got any predictions for us?
I haven't looked at who's playing tomorrow, but if you told me them, if you had them in front of you, I could try and predict. I am normally quite lucky with the Premier League.
Let's have a look. Okay, I'll get them up for you. So we've got Gerwen, Price, Nathan Aspinall, and Chris Dobie, Peter Wright. They're the first two games.
Okay, well, Price and Dobie.
And the last two we've got, these might be a bit harder. Michael van Gerwen, Michael Smith, Johnny Clayton, Dimitri Vandenberg.
Ooh, Smith and Clayton.
All right, we'll see how your predictions go. And just lastly, we mentioned the averages earlier. We know you're also chasing that first 30-plus average, one dart average, that is, so 90 average with 3 darts. How about this weekend to tick that milestone off? How good would that be?
Oh, well, I think that would really instill more belief in me, because I'm only ever doing it in practice. Nearly, my highest one was 29.78 last Tuesday in practice, so it would be huge for me, just to say I've done it, but to do it in a game, because I keep doing all of the better averages. I'm doing behind closed doors, and I'd like to show people that I have got more in the tank, because I know there is. I'd be absolutely over the moon if it was to come out, this weekend, especially on such an important weekend for me.
Definitely. Well, we've got our fingers crossed for you, Kim. Congratulations on what you've achieved already in your short time in darts, and we wish you all the best, not just for this weekend, but for what else is to come this year as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks again to Kim for joining us. Now we're going to finish up the show. We've got a couple of questions in the mailbag. We've also got our question of the week. Let's start with the mailbag, and I think George Dobson has outdone himself here. We spoke about it off air. His latest question for us is, if you could pick one current PDC player to be your dad, who would you pick?
Yeah, we were talking off air. George Dobson asks some real doozy of questions, and I think this one outdoes them all. I'm going to go Michael Smith for 2 reasons. One, I've seen him with his children, and it's clear he is a phenomenal parent. And I don't mean that to downplay how good most of the other fathers are on the PDC circuit. I'm sure most of them are really good fathers, but I've seen him with his children. I know he's a good father. But 2, he's the world number 1. He's making, maybe Michael van Gerwen endorsements probably still makes more than he does, but he's probably the 2nd or 3rd highest paid player on circuit. So for 1, because I know he's a great father, and 2, who wouldn't complain about having all that money? I'll have to go Michael Smith.
I had Michael Smith down here as well as one of my options, not because of the reason that you mentioned, which is a great one, but he was recently on holiday to Las Vegas, and I wouldn't have minded a bit of that. And the same with Michael van Gerwen. When he usually goes on holiday, we see the pictures online. It is somewhere hot, so I'd definitely sign up for that. But yeah, just a word for George there. He's given us some belters in the past for our listener questions, and this might be the best one we've had. It definitely made me laugh when I first read it, and not something I've ever thought of about really. If a dart player was to be my dad, and I was thinking about this, do I rule out all the players that aren't old enough to be my dad? So I'm looking at players that are over the age of 40, 45 really. So that does narrow it down quite a lot. So I was thinking maybe Johnny Clayton. He always comes across as a nice guy and still very down to earth. But I'm going to go with someone else. I'm going to go with Darren Webster to be my dad if I had a choice from the PDC players. What a character. And I mentioned about this question making me laugh, and I don't think there would be a dull day in the company of Darren Webster. He'd always make you smile, and I reckon he is just fun to be around, to see what he gets up to. And being from Norfolk as well, it's a nice place in the UK to live, a nice bit of countryside. I'm not sure exactly where in East Anglia Darren lives, but if it's Norwich in the city, that's not as quiet, but again, it's a nice place. Or if it is outside it in the countryside, you've got some nice scenery, nice and peaceful, and yeah, I wouldn't complain with that either.
Yeah, that's also a good shout there. Now we'll move on to our second question, and I have a different second question than you have there. Maybe you missed this one that came in. This one comes from me, and which is, what are your picks for the Premier League tonight? I'm going Gerwen, Price, 6'2", Nathan Aspinall, Chris Dobie, 6'4", Peter Wright, Michael Smith, 6'4", Michael van Gerwen, and Johnny Clayton, 6'4", Dimitri Vandenberg. How about you?
Some great picks, and I wouldn't be able to tell you if they're right or wrong. So I'm guessing they are the correct results. So fair play on that. And we did have Kim Holden on the show earlier, and I did ask her picks for Thursday. So I let her know what the games were. So I can't remember off the top of my head what her picks were. So we'll find out by now when you're listening to this how she got on. So yeah, if those picks are right, congratulations, you've beat me again.
Well, fingers crossed. I'm hopeful that they will be. Now, our next question, though, comes from Nathan Barrington. Who will be a better World Cup player for England, Rob Cross or Luke Humphries? It's right now very tight between those two for who will join Michael Smith in the squad. Nathan says, I know you like Cross, but Luke in better form, and Cross has been in the World Cup before and not done that great.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And if Luke Humphries had have won that final against Michael van Gerwen on Sunday, he would be the provisional England number 2 alongside Michael Smith. But there is still a few more events to go before the cut-off. And as you say, very close at the moment. And yeah, it's hard to back against a potential Rob Cross appreciation minute, which we could get if he gets in the World Cup. And I think saying Rob's not done great in the World Cup is a bit harsh. And I was having a look back. He's been involved 3 years. First year, he lost to Paul Lynn with a ton plus average, but got to the quarterfinals, lost in the pairs to Belgium, and they averaged a ton in that game. And 2019, these were the 2 years that he was with Michael Smith. You could argue second round, top seeds, they should have done better. But Rob Cross lost with a 106 average in his singles to Ireland. And that was the game that Willie O'Connor averaged 115 in that game. So a little bit of sympathy there, I think, for losing that game. And then 2020, the last time we've seen Rob Cross in the World Cup, top seeds again with Michael Smith, and they made the final, lost to an impressive Wales, Gerwen, Price and Johnny Clayton. So I think it's a pretty decent record that the Rob's got in the World Cup. But I think I've got to agree with Nathan. I think it would be nice to see a new face in the England team, and Smith and Humphries, the prospect of that. All the games are going to be pairs this year, so the rhythm is going to be difficult for players to get into that rhythm. But I think those two, the pace that they play, I think they will bounce off each other pretty well. So yeah, 2 more Euro Tours, 2 more Players' Championships before the cut-off. There's going to be chances for Luke to make up that gap, and he's well within touching distance now after getting to all these Euro Tour finals. So for me, I'm happy either way. If Rob Cross gets in, we could have an appreciation minute. If not, we get Luke Humphries. I'll be glad to see him involved as well.
Cross has had some good moments this year, but the consistency just hasn't been there. And there's been some really befuddling performances. He'll look brilliant one match, and then the next look very subpar. And I don't know what to make of it. Look in the Players' Championship so far this year, he's 46th in averages, behind some players who've really not done much. Ricky Evans is 44th. I just don't know what to make of Cross's performances. Luke has been putting himself in position to win almost every time. He's third in averages in the Players' Championship, has made some finals on the Euro Tour, hasn't won a Euro Tour yet this year. He didn't lose any finals last year. He won all 4. This year he's not winning any, he's losing them all, but he's still getting there. And if he keeps making finals, he's gonna pass Rob Cross. I do think on current form, Humphries would make the better partner, and as you mentioned, also the rhythm I think would suit both of them. But I don't think the rhythm is the biggest reason to go by. Overall, Humphries has just been that better player. He's, I think the best player is Gerwen Price right now in the world. Michael Van Gerwen is second, and you can say a bunch of them as the possibility for third. But Luke Humphries is in that conversation right now. Rob Cross isn't, and just based on that, I think you have to say Luke would make the better partner because he's right now the better player.
And our last question of the show, it is our question of the week, and it's getting a lot of talk on social media now. Who took out 302 in 6 darts better? Was it Peter Wright against Noel Malikdem in the 2020 PDC World Championship, or was it Rob Cross against Phil Taylor to win the 2018 PDC World Championship? What are you going for?
This is obviously not the Rob Cross appreciation minute, because in a question of Rob Cross or someone else, we both pick someone else, and I have a feeling in the next question of Rob Cross or someone else, we're both about to pick someone else. And it's not to diminish Rob Cross's 302 in 6. It was to win the world title, but he was 6 sets to 2 up. If he didn't check that out, okay, Phil Taylor could have come back. It's weird saying he was 6 to 2 up and averaging 107, but that's another reason to think, at some point he was going to drop off. But I just don't think Phil Taylor had enough in the tank to come back, even if Rob Cross dropped off, unless he went from averaging 107 to 87 for the next 4 sets. So Rob Cross was going to cross the line, if not there, then in the next visit or in the next set. Peter Wright doesn't take out that 302 in 6. Yes, Noel Malikdem could have come back and missed 3 at double. I believe it was double 18, but you don't expect that to happen. You don't think that's going to happen. Nothing in that match up to that point would have made you think it would happen. If anything, you would have thought at least 4 out of 5 times Peter Wright was done if he doesn't take that out in 6. And 302 in 9 is difficult enough. So you add that in, and it's not just that Peter Wright has to take that out. If he doesn't take it out, the more likely outcome is that he doesn't even do it in 9, and that means Noel Malikdem has 6 darts to finish off the match. I think you have to go Peter Wright's just because he had to take it, and everything that transpired later, him winning that world title, him going on the following year and winning the world match play, a year later winning another world title, becoming world number 1. None of that happens probably if Peter Wright doesn't do that. Peter Wright might not have won another major. We don't know. There's no way to know. But that showed that Peter Wright could do it that year. And I think I have to go Peter Wright for all of those reasons.
Yeah, we are agreeing on this one, and it is a question which has divided our listeners. Looking at the poll at the moment, which is on our Twitter, do go and have your say, but we've had more than 700 votes so far, and we have put up a clip of Peter and Rob's 302, so you can remind yourselves on how they did it. And looking at the poll at the moment, 47% are going with Peter Wright, 53% are going with Rob Cross. And just read out some of our responses that we've had from our listeners as well. We've had Timo says Cross's one is very much signature him, and to seal his first world title with that is fantastic, but Wright was clinging on to his tournament run, which he won in the end with the skin of his teeth, so I'm going to give this one to Wright. Ben Francis says, I accidentally voted for Wright instead of Cross. Whoops, I love a treble 18, double 16 finish. Longusta, good friend of ours, says snake bites was more important as it kept him in the tournament, but what better way to win your first major, let alone to become world champion in your debut year against the GOAT. I don't think he played Co in that game, but in his final ever professional match, Voltage gets my vote. And last one from our listeners, Charles, saying arguably Wright, purely because he survived the match start and went on to win the World. So that tournament changed his darting career and life consequently. And yeah, lots of you getting in touch with your thoughts. So thank you for that and keep them coming in. But yeah, a bit like one of our earlier questions, you've not got to guess too many times what I'm going to say, because I'm a Peter Wright fan, and had he not gone on to win that World Championships or lost in the next round or ended up losing that match to Noel Malik Dem, it wouldn't really be a debate. But to take those 6 darts, 302, they were 6 darts that would end up changing his career 2 weeks later, becoming a world champion. And I remember I was on the way back from London. I'd been to Ali Pali for the afternoon session that day, and we were on the last train back, and I was following the score on my phone. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, how close the game was. And I think it's probably the most excited I've been for following a game of darts where I'm not actually seeing the darts. I'm just seeing the scores flash up. And I remember seeing the clips afterwards of the 302 in 6 darts and the drama that unfolded that night. And yeah, not to take anything away from Rob Cross to win a world championship that way is pretty special. But I think what Peter Wright went on to do a couple of weeks later and what he's gone on to do for the next few years gets the nod for me.
Well, just seen the Premier League scores come in. It looks like it's 12 points to me this week. What do you know? But anything else for this week?
I think this is something that we're going to have to keep doing, is recording on a Thursday evening, so we actually don't talk about the Premier League and we don't get any picks wrong. Well, I don't get them wrong anyway. But yeah, thanks to our guests, to Berry, to Kim for joining us. Thank you to our sponsor Dartwolf for their continued support. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, you've not had enough, give Dartwolf a follow at Dartwolf180. And big thank you to everyone for listening. Thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate the support, and another busy weekend of darts coming up. We've touched on it a little bit. The Women's Series back this weekend. We've got more Euro Tour. They're back in Prague this weekend as well. So there's going to be lots for us to discuss, I'm sure, next week. But until then, whatever you're doing, make sure you enjoy the darts.
Yes, indeed. And might be a meaningless Premier League next week if Johnny Clayton goes on and wins the title. So maybe we won't discuss our picks next week because it really won't matter. But we'll be back next week for episode 305. A tricky number to check out in 6, but I'm sure some of our listeners can do it. I know I can't. We'll be back, as I said, next week. Until then, enjoy the darts in Prague and hang tight for anything else you need to hang tight for.